What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another top 5 video. Been a long time since I've done one of these, and I've got a very special guest with me today, debuting on my channel, and I'll be debuting on his channel as well. Why is it taking so long for us to debut something? I have no idea, but he's here. Bryan Lomax from Bryan Lomax Movie Talk, 1/4 of Scream Stream. Bryan, tell us about your channel.
Bryan Lomax Movie Talk, as he said. I've actually got two movie channels on YouTube. If you're into kind of theology and stuff and how it relates to film, Movie Evangelist. But yeah, my biggest channel is Bryan Lomax Movie Talk. That's where I just shoot the breeze about anything movie related. And yeah, kind of, it has seemingly taken ages for us to get together for these. We had these ideas for a long time. It's just taken us ages to, I don't know, blame time differences or something, but yeah.
I will blame the time difference. Time gets in the way. So this video, what we're going to be doing for my channel is going to be our top 5 favorite John Carpenter films. Big director in horror, you guys should know the name. If you don't, I'm sure once we start rattling off these movies, you'll recognize them very quickly. And I believe at the same time that I release this video over at Bryan's channel, he's going to have our top 5 favorite sci-fi sequels. So once this video is debuted, go over to Bryan Lomax Movie Talk, hit the subscribe button, check out that video as well and all of his other reviews, rankings, all that good stuff. Give him a like and a subscribe, please. And without further ado, let's talk about some John Carpenter. So, Bryan, you're the guest. Kick us off with your number 5.
Okay, yeah, straight into it. No honourable mentions. I'm going to go with a fairly recent watch, actually. This is a film that's been on my radar for so long because everybody bigs it up and says it's like probably Carpenter's best. I put it on my number 5, and it's Escape from New York. Yeah, I enjoyed it a lot. I think visually really stunning. You know, as you'd expect from Carpenter, he does love his wide angles, and I am a man who loves wide angles. I just think that there's a section in the final third, or just before we get into the real climax of it, that it kind of drags a little bit, and that's really the thing that knocks it down a few. But other than that, yeah, really great film.
Yeah, I actually didn't see Escape from New York until I think 2 years ago, so I'm right there with you. It was a really late introduction for me. It's not on my list, but if we did do honorable mentions, it would be on that list of honorable mentions because it's a very cool movie. It's very, it's definitely iconic, not only for the character of Snake Plissken, but also because it's one of my favorite John Carpenter themes. But yeah, very cool movie. But like you said, just a couple of things that just, John Carpenter's got so many awesome movies that saying that it didn't quite make the top 5, or in your case made number 5, is not an insult whatsoever. So cool pick for number 5. My number 5 is a movie that never gets mentioned on any of these lists, so I'm expecting Bryan to give me one of those very confused looks that he loves to give me whenever I talk about Halloween 3 and things like that. So number 5 for me is going to be John Carpenter's Vampires. Now, this is a movie that
oh man,
I grew up with. Whenever it came out, I remember renting it day one whenever it came out on VHS. I popped it in, and I've always been a big vampire fanatic. I still call The Lost Boys, in competition with John Carpenter, another John Carpenter film I'll be talking about, is my favorite horror movie of all time. So always been a huge vampire fan. And the style of this movie is just very cool to me. It's about a group of vampire hunters that's hunting down the last remaining, like, alpha vampire, like the vampire that started it all because they want to start wiping out vampires completely. And this alpha vampire finds out about it, wipes out the entire hunting clan with the exception of James Caan and one of the Baldwin brothers, and they have to go on as this little twosome and try to finish the job themselves. It's a brutal movie. There's tons of gore. The vampires, to me, are genuinely scary in this. I like the little guitar riff score that John Carpenter puts into it. It's kind of like a vampire western, and James Woods is just one of the most badass characters. I mean, he's up there with Snake Plissken to me. He's just very cool, very aggressive, and I love the movie to death. So very unpopular pick for a top 5, and I'm gonna get a lot of hate for the ones that did not make the list because I squeezed that one in there, but screw it. So Bryan, go ahead, start yelling at me.
Man. That is a bitter pill to swallow, I gotta say. I saw this film way back when it first came out. You know, one of those John Carpenter's vampires, because he's famous for sticking his name over the film, claiming it as his own. Even if he's adapted someone else's material, it's still John Carpenter's whatever. So yeah, you know, I watched it with a friend. We were both really big vampire fans at the time. This was long before Twilight, before kind of the lore of vampires got diluted. Yeah, we were not impressed at all. I think I'm with you completely on James Woods. Totally with you on James Woods. I'm also with you on the aesthetic to an extent. I've always liked the idea of crossing the Western with a vampire, but if you're going to give me a Western vampire, you got to hit me with Near Dark before this, big time. And it's just like, yeah, this kind of pales in comparison. And I watched this recently again, because before we did this list, and whenever I do these kind of lists, I always like to be sure, because once you stick something on video out there, it feels finite. So I've literally spent this past week watching stuff, and this was one that I was actually looking forward to getting back to, because I'd seen you bigging it up on Facebook and stuff, and I was like, maybe I'll give it a rewatch, because I do tend to agree with you quite a lot. There are many occasions where we've been the dissenting voices in things, so I thought, you know what, maybe he's on something. I watched it, and no, it's crap. It's entertaining crap, I will grant it, but I cannot in all good conscience call it a good film. It is entertaining. It's definitely entertaining, but it ain't good. So for that reason, I couldn't give it serious contemplation when I was talking top 5.
Fair enough. Yeah, like Bryan said, if you've watched Scream Stream, there about 85% of the time, me and him are like a straight and arrow, exactly verbatim, have the same exact opinions, and then there's 15% of the time when we are on opposite ends of the earth. So this is one of those times. So no problem. I'll be the lone voice singing John Carpenter vampire praise. But moving on from that, Bryan, hit us with your number 4.
Okay, my number 4 is probably one of the best Stephen King adaptations, actually, which is Christine. It's not perfect. It does have some problems. There are times when information is kind of given to us through dialogue, exposition, rather than us actually seeing it. Like, my main problem is, so this main kid who kind of becomes obsessed with this car, which he calls Christine. Arnie, sorry. We see his descent, you know, but there's a section where we see him start to go out with this girl, and her kind of opinion of him, the way we see her opinion shaped by his change in behaviour, it's almost just told to us, because we have this period of time where, you know, that the footballer guy kind of goes in hospital, and then it's a few weeks later, and all of a sudden she's like, "You've changed, you're not the same," and all this, and it's that stupid car, and it's like, hang on a sec, we've not seen any of this, you're just telling it to us. So other than that, which is my main problem with the film, everything else is fantastic. The atmosphere, once again, Carpenter with his wide angle shots, just bringing so much into frame, and just the way he builds character from this car. The car becomes a character, a fully fledged character in this film, and almost like a horror icon within itself. You know, you think of Freddy and Jason and all them lot, if they'd have done sequels to Christine would be one of those horror icons, to me at any rate. If the sequels were, you know, as good as this, you know, in quality and stuff, just the way that, like I say, Carpenter builds character from it. So yeah, Christine, my number 4.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to save my little speech on Christine for a little bit later on in this video, but I agree with a lot with what you're saying. My number 4 is another very underrated, in my opinion, John Carpenter movie. It's often brought up just alongside 2 other of his movies, because he has this Apocalypse trilogy, unofficial trilogy, where you have The Thing, you have Prince of Darkness, and you have my number 4 pick, In the Mouth of Madness. This is a movie that, again, I kind of grew up with. It's a movie that it takes a lot of kind of like H.P. Lovecraft type of influences. It also kind of has a little bit of a Stephen King feel to it, while having a lot of that signature John Carpenter stuff. Basically tells a story about this big horror writer who's basically Stephen King, but they call him, I forget his name honestly, but he's like the icon for horror novels. And he goes missing, so then you have Sam Neill, who is hired as like a private investigator to go find out where this guy is, because he's supposed to be delivering his newest book, and the publishers want to know where the hell it's at. And upon trying to discover where this guy is, he ends up in this, what was supposed to be a fictional town in these novels, and demonic stuff is starting to happen. Like the person that he's with starts to slip into demonism a little bit. It's a mind trip of a movie. And Sam Neill gives a great performance. It's got some of the best creature effects that I've seen in John Carpenter movies, alongside one that I'll be talking about a little bit later. But it's a very cool, unique flavor for a John Carpenter movie to me, because it feels, like I said, there's some H.P. Lovecraft, there's some Stephen King. It's like a little bit of a mix of all of those, and it just takes you on a wild ride that even no matter how many times you watch it, there's still things to uncover, because it kind of ends on a little bit of an ambiguous note, like some other John Carpenter films tend to do. And it's just a very cool movie for me to revisit and be like, oh, I wonder if this is what's going on here, and this is what's going on here. So it's a very cool movie that's going to be getting a Shout Factory / Scream Factory release, I think in June. So I think a lot of us horror fans will be talking about it a lot more, especially on Killer Flicks once that comes out. But that's a big favorite of mine. So In the Mouth of Madness, big recommendation for that one, number 4. Brian, scream at me some more.
I sense a commentary coming on. Yeah, I sense a scream stream commentary coming on. In the Mouth of Madness, it's been too long for me to judge in any kind of real way. I will say, based purely off memory, I didn't like it. But that being said, yeah, man, I saw it when it first came out in cinemas, which was like what, mid-90s, was it? Something? Yeah, so 95 or something. Man, like that. My tastes have changed so much since then. Like I love The Thing. I really liked Prince of Darkness. It's been so long since I've seen this. I remember some kid riding a bike with wacky hair sticking out, and this thing rapping against his wheel. And that being really creepy. I remember the town having a very Twin Peaks kind of vibe about it. The way he just kind of showed up in this town, and yeah, it felt very Twin Peaks to me. And it was that era, so I wouldn't be too surprised if Twin Peaks did have something of an impact on it, on the creation of it. But yeah, it's too much distance for me to make a judgment call. And I'm gutted really that I didn't get to watch it in my recent kind of revisiting of Carpenter's. But I think I disliked it so much at the time that I didn't really feel that compelled to. But I have heard a lot being said about it recently, and it does kind of make me want to revisit. So yeah, Scream Stream commentary. Cool.
Well, I encourage you to give it one of those famous Drum Dum second viewings. So, and maybe we'll have a Scream Stream thing on it. But yeah, I guarantee we'll be talking about this movie soon, because I think there's been a couple people pressing Lee to watch it now that he's reviewed Prince of Darkness. This is next on the list, and like I said, the Shout Factory is coming out soon. So I think it'll be a good time for you to revisit it. And if your opinion holds up, I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. All right, well, that's my number 4. So your number 3, Brian, and I have a suspicion that our top 2 is going to be identical. So when we get there, I made a little bet with myself. So number 3.
Okay, my number 3 is, to me, I mean, I think you said John Carpenter's Vampires is probably his most underrated. I don't know if I just imagined you saying that, but for me, his most...
I did say it.
His most underrated, simply because when you ask people to list their top John Carpenter films, like if you say to people, give us your top 3 John Carpenter, I think you would be hard-pressed to find people who put this in their top 3. It's not the obvious choice, but for me, yeah, I think nostalgia has a big factor, but it's Starman. I think Starman is seriously underrated as far as Carpenter goes. I'm a big sci-fi fan, as you know. You know, the collab video we're doing on my channel is all about sci-fi sequels. And this was one of my earliest introductions to sci-fi, I think. I think Terminator was like one of the ones that I remember very specifically as a kid, but Starman as well. There's like a handful of films that stick out, and this was one of them. It's very different to what Carpenter usually gives us, because it's heartwarming, it's quite light. The music to it is a lot different as well. It's still very synth. It still feels very Carpenter-esque, but it's a I don't know, I guess a more optimistic sounding score to it, rather than the dread tones that we get throughout the rest of his work. Yeah, a different vibe, but just shows that actually this is a guy that can do more than just horror. There's some awesome special effects in it as well. I mean, Carpenter was very good at doing physical effects. It's one of the charms of his films. You know, even later stuff like Vampires, it's all practical work. And it's only when you get to a film like The Ward, where he goes CGI, that it kind of goes off the rails a bit. He's in his element when he's working with practical effects. And there's tons of them in this, absolutely tons. And there's plenty of other films that don't have anywhere near the kind of budget that this film had, that don't look as good as this film does. So, yeah, and Kirstie Allen as well, real charmer, always a real good presence on screen, and it's a bit disappointing that she kind of gave up the whole acting gig, to be honest. So, yeah, number 3, Starman.
Wow. Well, this gets to be my opportunity to admit that I have never seen one of your picks. So I've never seen Starman.
Oh, wow.
I need to check that out. That was one of his first films, wasn't it? It was right before The Fog, if I'm not correct. If I'm not mistaken.
Oh no, it was after.
It was
I
after.
believe.
Oh.
Oh yeah, I think it was. Was it after? So 1984.
Oh, okay. Right in the mix of it. Okay. Wow. That's right in his kind of his prime too.
Yeah, kind of at the height, really. So.
Sweet. Well, I'll have to check that one out. I've been thinking about doing a John Carpenter review series at some point in the future, so I'll definitely check that one out whenever that comes around, if at the latest. But you piqued my interest on it, so I'm going to check that one out soon. All right. My number 3 is a film that you have already mentioned that I'm a fanatic of, and that is Christine. I love Christine. This is a movie that, you know, my dad raised me, and there's a select few movies that me and him just kind of bonded over. Every time we rewatch it, it was like a father and son moment, and Christine is one of those movies. Like when we put in Christine, he had the old laser disc. It was just like, you know, dad and sons hanging out watching Christine. So there's about half a dozen movies that I always hold close to my heart for that reason alone, but Christine's just phenomenal to me. It's one of the best Stephen King adaptations. It's got John Carpenter's strength all over it, just like you said with working with practical effects. One of the coolest effects that he never gets really mentioned for is the car transformation whenever it's destroyed and it expands back out into pristine quality, and just knowing how he did that so simply just by pulling the car into itself with hydraulics and then just playing the video backwards. It's so simple, but it's so brilliant when you see it unfold in the movie. The character of Christine, just like you said, I mean, horror icon status. It could have easily been if there was more of it. It still is to me with the very few like evil car movies that we have. I do agree with what you're saying. There is certainly some gaps that kind of got taken out of the novel for the sake of runtime, that I feel like if the movie had stretched its legs a little bit more, it could have been that much better, especially involving with some of the transformation of the character of Arnie. But what we do get, I think, is very chilling, because you get a kid who, like, from the very beginning of the movie is just tormented in school. His parents are overbearing. They want to make every single decision for him, and he's got that one friend who we've all known, one person in high school who was kind of the cool jock, but he was still like the friendly jock. He wasn't the one that just kind of towed the line and made fun of everybody like everybody else seemed to. So that friendship is very cool. Seeing the destruction of that friendship in favor of this relationship with this car is very chilling. I love the effect that he put in kind of having the era of the late 70s, early 80s in what's going on, but also having the 50s in there with the car, because those are the two like most iconic eras to me. Like whenever that car is trying to communicate, it communicates through 50s music. Like the scene whenever the first bully's about ready to get taken out and you just see headlights and you hear that old 50s music and he's like, Cunningham, is that you? Like that whole scene, everything, the way that that unfolds. Christine, I could just gush on for hours. I did a full review on it because it was one of my favorite Stephen King adaptations leading up to it. So I love Christine to death. That's my number 3. So top 2. I'm curious. I'm going to let you give your whole spiel, and if I'm right and we have the same ones, I'll just go right into mine afterwards. But give me your top 2. I think I have an idea what it's going to be, but I'm not going to spoil it. I'll let you announce it.
You want both of them?
No, go ahead and give me your top 2, and then I think by default we'll know what number 1 is by then. But
well, maybe. Could be some surprises. Who knows? Okay, yeah, my number 2 is Halloween. It's the film that introduced me to John Carpenter. It's the film that probably introduced me to horror, along with Terminator, as I've already stated. It's very simple. It's also a film that kind of, as a wannabe filmmaker myself at a young age, it kind of made me realize that actually you don't need that much to get a film made. You know, this is a very low budget independent movie and shot quite simply, and actually it's that simplicity that adds to the tension. Again, already banged on about this, but those wide angles, you know, you have Michael Myers stalking his prey and he could be hiding anywhere in frame. So that style, that kind of John Carpenter style, the style he's become famous for, I think was primarily born out of this need to keep things within budget, to keep things very low cost. So, you know, you shoot everything in a wide, and if you don't get everything else, then at least you've got that wide, you can move on. And you know, he finds ways to move the camera whilst keeping it in a wide and changing things in the frame, and it allows you to do long takes. And yeah, for me that's kind of style dictated by budget, but it was so effective it kind of became a signature style for Carpenter. So yeah, it is a great film. I think there aren't really any issues that I have with it, other than maybe by today's standards it can be a little bit dull, and I don't mean that as an actual criticism. It's the law of the land, isn't it? You know, the faster we get, the older we get, the faster we get kind of with what we need to see, the more brutal we need things to be, this, that and the other. So by today's standards it can feel a bit tame, but just as a lesson in history, to look at film, if you're studying film, then this has to be one of those films that goes on your list, because without it we wouldn't be where we are. So, you know, without this there wouldn't be Friday the 13th. Without this there wouldn't be that 80s kind of slasher craze. So yeah, things would have been very different, let's just put it that way.
Absolutely. Well, my number 2 is also Halloween. So I guess Lee's gonna have to replace both of us. So for basically everything that you said, I mean, this is one of those pioneer slasher movies, one of those pioneer horror movies. It's like you said, a lesson in history that's perfect. Like it's cemented in horror history for everything that it did, for the character of Michael Myers, for the way that it was created on a low budget, for how simplistic it was, for some of the way that he did some of the effects. Like my favorite effect in the entire movie is that scene when Laurie Strode is crying against that darkened open door, and you just see that one little 1-watt bulb slowly open up and Michael Myers' face comes in behind her. Like, that's such a great effect, and it kind of paints that blank canvas of the Michael Myers mask, which is terror, and that one little small effect right there. So yeah, it's one of those movies, it's like, what else can you say about it? I mean, we've talked about Halloween ad nauseum on Scream Stream, it feels like, as well as Killer Flicks, but you know, it's just a classic. You can't get around it. I mean, I'm a Freddy fanatic. I've said that all the time. I'm Freddy till I die, but Halloween is still better than the best Friday or the best Nightmare on Elm Street movie. If it wasn't for that damn ending of Nightmare on Elm Street, the original, where Wes Craven and Rob Shea had a little argument, I think I'd probably put that one above, but that always annoys me when I watch the original movie. But yeah, Halloween, I mean, it's like you said, it's simplistic. By today's standards, it is a little bit tame, but I, like you said, it's hard to even really call that a negative. It's just more like a little bullet point you throw out there for new viewers, I guess. But I mean, it just, even just a couple of years later when they did Halloween 2, look how much the gore landscape changed in the Halloween franchise. I mean, it went from simplistic and you don't see any blood or anything like that to full-on gore effects. But to me, I feel like it makes the original film much more effective because it kind of keeps the focus on everything else and not just how much gore, how much nasty we can put in these kills. So yeah, Halloween's a classic. I mean, it's one of those movies that whenever people do top fives, it's probably always going to be in the top 2 in this debate. But like you, I have one movie that I like just a little bit more. So go ahead and kick us off with your number 1, Brian, and I'm hoping it's the same as mine. Otherwise, we're going to be arguing for 30 minutes.
I think it clearly is going to be. This is one I only saw for the first time fully just over a year ago, and it's The Thing. Again, science fiction mixed with horror. You can't go wrong for me. I think when you combine those two genres, you tend to get some of the best movies ever made. Mm-hmm. But yeah, a brilliant film, all about paranoia, all about the enemy within, just seeing all these guys turn on each other very quickly as they start to realise that there is an alien amongst them is just, as Lee would say, tension 101. It's absolutely perfect in that regard. And you know, you want to talk about physical, practical effects. This is practical effects 101. If you want to school someone about the history of practical effects, at some point this film is going to have to come into the conversation because it's just balls to the wall, absolutely graphic, gruesome, inventive, really creative stuff. And it's stunning, staggering to think that this film was a bomb at the box office. The critics panned it pretty much across the board, and yeah, it died a death on release, but it became such a cult classic for obvious reasons. People started to cotton on to, actually, this is a damn good movie. You know, great central turn from Kurt Russell, really great character, something of a nihilist in many respects, but that in itself is kind of a commentary on what you need to survive in a world in which everyone is turning on each other. So yeah, brilliant stuff. Definitely for me his best film.
Absolutely, I agree with everything you said. That film that I was alluding to earlier that constantly competes with The Lost Boys for my favorite horror film of all time, this is it. John Carpenter's The Thing. This is another one of those movies I was talking about as well, about that father and son thing. Me and my dad I felt like it was the only person in the world who knew what The Thing was, which was just weird to me. And then you get introduced to the horror community later on in life, and then you find out that everybody loves The Thing for the most part. So it was kind of a breath of fresh air to be like, good, I'm not alone. But yeah, The Thing is just, it's a flawless movie in my mind. Like, I could never, if you could give me a week to try to think of a negative on this movie, and I would have to take another week, because it's everything that he does is flawless to me. And like you said, it's mind-boggling to figure out how this movie failed so much whenever it came out. And it's actually the reason why we have Christine, because the only reason that he took the job of Christine was because he was so just mentally wrecked that this movie failed, that he just took what he considered an easy kind of paycheck. But nonetheless, The Thing, yeah, practical effects, I can't think of a movie that is a better example for why practical effects done right is so much better than computer-generated effects. Especially since computer-generated effects get overused and not done very well more times than not. But The Thing, great characters. It's kind of an ensemble piece, but every character has their own little identity. Every character you kind of like and dislike in equal measures for certain reasons, but you still have certain characters that you gravitate towards, like Kurt Russell, obviously just because of the charisma of Kurt Russell, you gravitate towards him, but you got Keith David in a really good role. The scene that this movie is kind of known for me, that I always talk about as far as like a jump scare done perfectly, is the blood test scene. Whenever they figure out a way to decide who is going to be the Thing and who's actually human, and that is a perfectly crafted jump scare. So for everybody that says jump scares suck, I agree with you for the most part, but if you want to see one done correctly, watch The Thing. Yeah, a great ambiguous ending, like the perfect way to end this story, and such a sour note, and just a a note that tells you nothing but tells you everything at the same time, and fans are still kind of debating over what happens. The landscape of Antarctica, just that white blankness, like there's nothing coming to help you, there is no escape, you are here, deal with it. It just amplifies the tension. I could go on for hours about the thing. Like everything that you said, plus everything that I said, plus another hour of things that we could both come up with why this is number one, easy number one for me. As awesome as Halloween was, it will never compete with The Thing. The Thing is on a whole nother level with me. So that is my number one, and that is Bryan's number one. So hope you guys enjoyed this top 5 John Carpenter films. Please put your top 5 down in the comment section below, guys, and let us know what your favorites are. And be sure to go over to Bryan Lomax Movie Talk and check out our other video, Top 5 Sci-Fi Sequels. Bryan, tell us one more time where we can find you.
Yeah, you can find me over at Bryan Lomax Movie Talk. Also, please, if you like science fiction, check out my Facebook page, group, I should say, Cine Sci-Fi. And yeah, if you want a bit of theology in your film, go over to The Movie Evangelist, also on YouTube. Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely, we're going to do something else again at some point, but yeah, it's been a long time coming for me and Bryan to get a video out, so this was a lot of fun. And if you guys want to see us together, hopefully most of the time defending our opinions against the other two knuckleheads, go over to Scream Stream on Drum Dums and check that out. Especially any episode that we talk about Get Out. That's going to be some serious entertainment. So check that out, guys. Please like, share this video, hit the subscribe button on both our channels if you aren't already subscribed. If you want to check out my social media links, that's down in the video description below. And if you want to check out some more of my videos, as always, you can check that out by clicking right over here.